Welcome to Fright Night.
Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back. Unless you're new, then welcome for the first time. I like to make these little videos about things that I enjoy and want to share. Usually it's about film, frequently a lot of horror, and 80s and 90s throwbacks. For just films that I don't really hear as much about these days. But for this one, I'm kind of taking a break from my usual quick, spoiler-free recommendation format, even changing where I'm sitting for this one, for a general, I like this, I want to tell you all sorts of stuff about it kind of thing. So for this one, I want to talk about the Fright Night films. Actually, it's going to be 3 of them. I'm going to do at least 3 videos on this because I wanted to do a longer one that kind of covered everything in one, but it just wasn't really working out trying to make like a big half-hour video for it. So I'm just going to split this into like 3 or 4 videos because I've been a big fan of these Fright Night films for years. So there will be, of course, since it's a little bit of a different format, some spoilers in this. But before we dive in, for those of you who haven't seen these films yet, these have an aspect of like a Hitchcock film called Rear Window, I believe. But in this case, it's a teenager looking outside and being convinced that he has a vampire living next door. The official synopsis, of course, is: a teenager believes that the newcomer in his neighborhood is a vampire. He turns to an actor in a television horror show for help to deal with the undead. So he has to convince his friends of this, and he decided to enlist the help of this TV horror host because he's kind of obsessed about this and about those films that he's hosting, and he's kind of, I guess, having an issue separating that this guy is really just an actor. But anyways, I recommend this one highly. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to deal with any spoilers, go ahead and check it out, then come back here and watch the rest of the video. So for those who are still here or ones who are returning after checking it out, here we go. Fright Night from 1985. If you ever get that question as a horror movie fan, like what's your favorite vampire film, or especially during the hype, like when Twilight was all the rage and True Blood and all that back in the day, I always stick to this: Fright Night. Favorite vampire film, Fright Night. Favorite vampire performance, Fright Night. Favorite vampire character, it's like Jerry Dandridge from Fright Night. I actually put this vampire, Jerry Dandridge, at the top of my list. In part, of course, to how Chris Sarandon had portrayed him, but this is my favorite over any others. And I know that may sound strange, not just given the films, but you got to figure you got Stoker, Bright, Lumley, Rice. I mean, there's so many different vampires written that are very popular, but this is the one that really stuck with me. And there's just a couple of reasons why, about this vampire in particular and these films. So for Jerry Dandridge himself, he's got a lot of charm. Quite charming, super smooth, almost flirtatious in a way, and a tad full of himself, but for a reason. I mean, he is like this apex predator who's smart and cunning and charming. Sure, he can turn monstrous and everything and transform into quite a vampiric beast, but he's more easily simply going to charm you into letting him into your home, and then he's going to suck your blood. So he can charm his way in, but he can also get strong and beastly when he needs to. I've seen other vampires in film and TV who come across as dangerous or creepy right off the bat. Something strange or dangerous is up with them, and you're always suspicious right from the start. But Jerry, while maybe seeming a bit stuck up and self-centered, he's just a charmer. You're not really going to see him as dangerous, any more dangerous than just anybody else who's kind of self-centered or narcissistic, perhaps. I think that's one of the reasons why I like this film is how they kind of built these characters in general. That even the antagonist isn't simply bad. He's tricky. Now, when we get to the other characters in this, of course, they're written similarly as well. Charlie is kind of representing us, I feel like. This average high school kid, horror movie fan, particularly these old ones which seem kind of like a parody of like old Hammer titles, for instance. And his girlfriend Amy in this, I feel like the one thing her scenes really kind of bring to mind is keeping us on Charlie's side by showing how much she cares about him. Not just because of the vampire stuff, but even before all that, she really seems to care for him. As she represents this level of innocence in a way, while also becoming the focus of Jerry as she looks kind of like a reincarnation of somebody that he knew, way back in his past. Same thing with Ed. He just really ties things together. He works well with the group. So Ed, also known as Evil Ed or just Evil, this longtime friend of Charlie's who, has his back, and he can dish out the jokes and burns just as well as he can take them. But he really comes across as an outsider who's a bit misunderstood and kind of slipping out of Charlie's life a little bit as they're growing up and going through high school now. And then finally, of course, we come to Peter Vincent, vampire hunter, named after Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. He is like a version of what would be like a Hammer horror actor known as, you know, a vampire hunter in film, horror host now, and kind of like the sunset of his career in a way. Stuck in the past a bit, like kind of like stuck in his glory days and everything, but he's just an actor. So when real vampire stuff really starts to come about, he's gonna fold. He's a coward because he's just an actor. You know, he doesn't even believe in vampires, of course. So all of these characters really complement each other, both in how they're written and in how these actors actually portrayed them. They really seem to have a lot of great chemistry and a lot of heart behind all of this. Throughout the story, you know, as Charlie witnesses Jerry feeding off of a woman and Jerry getting invited into his house by Charlie's mother, you know, part of being charming, of course, and eventually attacking Charlie, you know, he's getting in over his head very, very quickly. So, of course, you know, his friends don't believe him, and he goes, you know, a bit obsessive and desperate in approaching Peter Vincent. But it's done really well, you know, even though we know as the audience that Charlie's telling the truth. You know, they never mislead us and are upfront about it. You know, seeing him struggle with having these issues slowly brings all of these characters together and pulls them in over their heads as well. Peter kind of being the first one, you know, beside Charlie, who kind of believes him, you know, having not seen Jerry's reflection. But then Amy gets kind of charmed and turned as well. Same thing with Ed. You know, Ed gets turned just by being willing to be turned at the promise of these vampire powers, so he won't feel alone or weak or be taken advantage of anymore. I mean, it's a great way to pull us not in too many directions, but just keep everybody associated as we slowly circle everything together into this tighter and tighter package. Now, you know, there are a few that I would have liked to have seen more of. You know, there's his mother, who's, you know, pretty funny, but there's not really much going on. She's just kind of representing his parent, who works at night, and that's why she's not around most of the time. And Jerry's familiar is super interesting, but we don't really get much on him either. You know, they kind of leave him as a mystery. But this doesn't throw off the film, either him or Charlie's mother, you know. But after, you know, rewatching this so many times over the years, of course, I want to know more and more about those characters. But when it comes to having even more characters, well, that's where part 2 comes in, and we'll get to that one later. Anyways, you know, this one is laid out so well, and over the years, I've watched it several times, from VHS recorded stuff off cable, to I even used to have this one on Laserdisc. I even have it on DVD, and I've got the Blu-ray as well. Oh, and I have the 4K Blu-ray. Oh yeah, and I have this soundtrack on vinyl as well. And I have similar ones for the sequel. You know, I got my Fright Night Part 2 DVD, as well as a Fright Night Part 2 Blu-ray, which is actually a Spanish edition. It does have English track and everything, but is the only way to get Part 2 pretty much in any way, it seems like. And I even have a copy of the remake, which I'll get into in another video. So, I simply love everything about, you know, this film. I mean, these films in general, you know, the sequel and the remake even, but, you know, I just love seeing, you know, Charlie seeing Jerry show up and have these suspicions, and how quickly those suspicions are proven to be true. Getting invited in by his mom and getting attacked at night. You know, there's no one to believe him. You know, Peter witnesses it, and then, you know, Ed and Amy eventually get turned, and they kind of understand what's going on. And poor Ed, you know, killed by Peter Vincent in a surprisingly heartbreaking scene, which, you know, also had some amazing effects. You know, some really great practical effects where you could see Peter's character now going from a vampire hunter actor to actually having killed a vampire. It's really a surprisingly sad scene, and a pretty gory scene as well. But, you know, we also get this really great effects shot with Jerry's familiar kind of being taken out. Kind of like this weird zombie-like turning to dust kind of death that's really disgusting and really done well. And we get big effects, big explosions with this, you know, final showdown with Jerry fully vamped out and Amy fully vamped out as well. We get a lot of suspense, thrills, a little bit of mystery there, the horror and action. All of it pays off by the end with this really great climax that wraps up the film perfectly. But, anyways, that's just me kind of gushing about Fright Night, you know, my little love letter to this movie. I hold a lot of nostalgia for this one as well, and not only do I have, you know, all of this big stack of media here about it, which I wish I'd saved that Laserdisc though. Shouldn't have ever gotten rid of that one. But you know, I got to meet Chris Sarandon about like a little bit over 10 years ago, I believe, and you know, super nice, great to chat with and everything. So, and since, you know, according to who, you know, people who've like commented or liked certain tweets of mine, you know, which makes me of course close personal friends now to Tom Holland himself and Luke Skywalker. You know, that's what it means on social media. If you like something or comment, you're tight now, right? Anyways, I figured, you know, it's really time for me to finally get around to making a video about this, you know, about at least these first three, you know, what it's, you know, which I've been meaning to do for a while. I just kept putting it off for a bit. But I also figured here we are at about the 2-year mark on my channel of, you know, making some, you know, reviews and recommendations. So it was a good time to start this up. I'm going to try to get the other 2 out sometime this week as well. Anyways, that's about all that I have to say about Fright Night. But what about you? You know, sound off in the comments. Do you hold this in high regard as well? Do you have that same kind of nostalgia that I do, or did you just think it was okay? I mean, for the most part, I feel like people have seen this movie have really enjoyed it. They might not put it on a level that I do, but seems to be all around a pretty enjoyable one. So anyways, like I said, pretty soon I'll be diving into Fright Night Part 2 from 1988, as well as the 2011 remake with the late Anton Yelchin and Toni Collette, Colin Farrell, and the Doctor himself, David Tennant. Not sure if I'll do that sequel remake one, Fright Night 2 New Blood, because I don't really understand what it's about, because it has some of the same characters, including Ed, who had died, and Peter Vincent's like a ghost hunter person in it, I think. I don't know. I mean, I heard it was okay, so maybe I'll track it down. But anyways, moving on, be sure to, you know, subscribe and hit that little bell icon to get notifications for when I put up that new content, and I will see you in the next one.